The sound of tearing plastic echoed through the marble lobby of the Grandfield Regency Hotel. Receptionist Ashley Mitchell held the shredded remains of what she assumed was a fake credit card, a satisfied smirk spreading across her face as she dropped the pieces into the wastebasket behind the counter. The woman standing before her maintained perfect composure despite the deliberate humiliation, her dark eyes taking in every detail of the scene unfolding around her. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What Ashley didn't know was that she had just destroyed the Black Centurion card belonging to Dr. Camille Rodriguez, the newly appointed CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality Corporation, the parent company that had quietly acquired the Grandfield Regency chain just 72 hours earlier. In exactly 4 minutes, Ashley's world would crumble, along with the careers of everyone who stood by and watched. Dr. Camille Rodriguez stepped out of the yellow taxi cab onto the bustling sidewalk of downtown Chicago's financial district. The October wind whipped through her natural curls as she adjusted her simple navy blazer and straightened her jeans. At 38, Camille had built an empire from nothing, transforming Pinnacle Hospitality from a single struggling motel in Detroit into a billion-dollar corporation spanning 4 countries. But tonight, she wasn't the polished executive who graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune magazines. Tonight, she was conducting what she called a, quote, cultural audit, an undercover assessment of her newest acquisition. The Grandfield Regency Hotel rose before her like a monument to old money and older prejudices. Its limestone facade gleamed under the streetlights, with brass fixtures that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. Doormen in burgundy uniforms flanked the entrance, their white gloves pristine as they opened doors for guests who looked like they belonged in a country club rather than a public hotel. Camille had heard troubling reports about the Grandfield chain during the acquisition process. Whispered stories of selective service standards and maintaining the right clientele. Her legal team had uncovered sealed settlements, suspicious employee turnover rates among minority staff, and a pattern of complaints that had been systematically buried by the previous ownership. Tonight would determine whether those whispers held truth. She pulled her leather messenger bag higher on her shoulder and approached the entrance. The doorman, a tall man with graying temples named Robert, glanced at her approaching figure. His practiced smile flickered for just a moment as he took in her casual attire and brown skin. The hesitation lasted barely a second, but Camille caught it. The subtle calculation, the mental sorting that determined whether she deserved the same enthusiastic greeting he'd given the elderly white couple who'd entered moments before. "Good evening," Robert said, his voice professionally neutral as he opened the door. "No? Welcome to the Grandfield, or pleasure to have you with us." The warm flourishes she'd observed him use with previous guests. Just the bare minimum of courtesy required by his job description. The lobby stretched before her like a scene from a bygone era. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across Persian rugs that probably cost 6 figures each. Guests moved through the space with the casual confidence of people accustomed to luxury, designer handbags, perfectly tailored suits, the kind of jewelry that came with insurance policies. The demographic was strikingly homogeneous, white, wealthy, and comfortable in their assumption that this space belonged to them. Camille made her way toward the reception desk, noting the subtle ways other guests' eyes tracked her movement. A woman in pearls and a fur stole whispered something to her companion, both glancing in Camille's direction. A businessman in a $1,000 suit stepped slightly aside as she passed, not quite moving out of her way, but creating just enough distance to signal his discomfort with her presence. The reception area buzzed with quiet activity. 3 staff members worked behind the mahogany counter, their movements efficient and practiced. Ashley Mitchell, the lead receptionist, stood at the center position. 26 years old with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that seemed painted on, Ashley had worked at the Grandfield for 4 years. She'd built her reputation on knowing exactly which guests deserved attention and which could be dismissed with minimal effort. To Ashley's left stood Marcus Thompson, a 24-year-old black man who'd been hired 6 months earlier. He was one of only 3 black employees in guest-facing positions throughout the entire hotel, a diversity hire that management could point to when questioned about their hiring practices. Marcus had quickly learned that survival at the Grandfield meant keeping his head down and following Ashley's lead, even when her methods made his stomach turn. The third receptionist, Jennifer Park, was a 31-year-old Korean-American woman who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times, despite her impeccable performance reviews. She'd noticed the patterns in how different guests were treated, but speaking up had only earned her subtle retaliation and veiled threats about her job security. Camille approached the desk with the same quiet confidence she brought to boardroom negotiations. Her posture spoke of education and success, but she knew that in spaces like this, those qualities were often invisible when wrapped in brown skin and casual clothes. "Good evening," she said, her voice warm and professional. "I have a reservation under Rodriguez." Ashley looked up from her computer screen, her practiced smile fading as she registered Camille's appearance. The assessment was swift and brutal. Dark skin, natural hair, clothes that didn't scream expensive designer labels. In Ashley's mental hierarchy, this woman didn't belong in the Grandfield's marble lobby, much less as a paying guest. "I'm sorry," Ashley said, her tone shifting to the condescending sweetness reserved for people she considered beneath her station. "Are you sure you have the right hotel? The Grandfield Regency is a luxury property, with rates starting at $800 per night." The insult hung in the air like poison gas. Other guests nearby slowed their conversations, sensing drama. Marcus shifted uncomfortably behind the counter, recognizing the familiar setup. He'd watched Ashley perform this routine before, the polite questioning that wasn't really questioning, the assumption that certain people couldn't possibly afford luxury accommodations. Camille's expression didn't change, but her dark eyes sharpened. She'd encountered this particular form of discrimination countless times throughout her career. In venture capital offices, at industry conferences, in restaurants where she was automatically seated near the kitchen despite her reservations. But experiencing it at a property she now owned added a layer of bitter irony to the familiar sting. "Yes, I'm certain," she replied calmly. "Dr. Camille Rodriguez. The reservation was made through our corporate travel department." Ashley's fingers hovered over her keyboard, but she didn't type anything. Instead, she glanced meaningfully at the security guard stationed near the lobby entrance, a subtle signal that Camille recognized immediately. The performance was beginning, and Ashley was playing to her audience of wealthy white guests who expected to be protected from people like Camille. Corporate travel? Ashley's laugh was sharp and dismissive. What company would that be? The question was designed to trap. If Camille named a legitimate corporation, Ashley could claim she'd never heard of it. If she provided too much detail, she'd be accused of lying. It was a game Ashley had perfected over years of gatekeeping luxury spaces. "Pinnacle Hospitality," Camille answered simply. Jennifer Park's head snapped up from her computer screen. She recognized that name from the business news she'd been following. Something about a major acquisition in the hotel industry. But Ashley either didn't notice or didn't care about her colleague's reaction. "Never heard of it," Ashley declared with theatrical authority. "And I would know all our corporate accounts." The lie was breathtaking in its boldness. Pinnacle Hospitality had been featured on the front page of the Chicago Tribune's business section just that morning, announcing their acquisition of several regional hotel chains. But Ashley's confidence in her own authority was absolute. She'd never been challenged, never faced consequences for her discriminatory behavior. The hotel's previous management had not only tolerated but rewarded her quote, ability to maintain standards. Marcus cleared his throat nervously. "Ashley, maybe we should just check the—" "Marcus," Ashley cut him off sharply. "I can handle this." Her tone carried the weight of hierarchy and the unspoken threat that challenging her would have consequences for his employment. Camille watched the interchange with growing fascination. The dynamics playing out before her revealed everything she needed to know about the culture that had been allowed to fester at the Grandfield. Ashley wielded her authority like a weapon, Marcus had been conditioned into silence, and Jennifer seemed caught between recognition and self-preservation. "Perhaps you could simply look up the reservation," Camille suggested, her voice remaining steady despite the mounting humiliation. Ashley's smile turned predatory. "I don't need to look up anything. I can tell just by looking at you that you don't belong here." She gestured dismissively at Camille's outfit. "This is a respectable establishment. We have standards." The word standards dripped with coded, meaning that everyone in the lobby understood perfectly. The elderly couple at the concierge desk turned to watch more openly now, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and approval. A young businessman pulled out his phone, sensing the kind of confrontation that might make good social media content. Camille reached into her messenger bag and withdrew her wallet. The movement was deliberate and calm, but Ashley's reaction was immediate and dramatic. "Security!" Ashley called out, her voice rising to ensure maximum attention. "We have a situation at the front desk." The security guard, a former police officer named Dave Patterson, approached with obvious reluctance. He'd been hired for his intimidating presence, but 15 years in law enforcement had taught him to read situations. The woman at the counter didn't match the profile of someone causing trouble. Her body language was non-threatening, her voice remained calm, and she was simply trying to access what appeared to be a credit card. But Ashley was a supervisor, and Grandfield's hierarchy was clear. Management expected security to support the front desk staff without question, especially when it came to maintaining the hotel's reputation. "Ma'am," Dave said apologetically, "I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the desk." Camille looked up at him with genuine sadness. She could see the discomfort in his eyes, the recognition that this situation felt wrong. But like Marcus, he'd been conditioned to follow orders rather than his instincts. "I'm simply trying to check into my reservation," she said quietly. "I have my credit card and identification." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Ashley's laugh was sharp and cruel. Anyone can buy fake identification these days, and that credit card is probably stolen. The accusation of theft sent a ripple of gasps through the growing crowd of onlookers. Ashley had crossed a line from discrimination into outright criminal accusation, but her confidence never wavered. She'd made similar accusations before and faced no consequences. In fact, her willingness to protect the hotel from undesirable elements had earned her bonuses and praise from the previous management. Camille slowly withdrew her credit card, a genuine Black American Express Centurion card, one of the most exclusive financial instruments in the world. The card's weight and distinctive design were immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with luxury spending, but Ashley's prejudice had blinded her to obvious evidence. "This should verify my ability to pay for accommodations," Camille said, placing the card on the marble counter. Ashley picked up the card with theatrical skepticism, turning it over in her hands as if examining evidence in a criminal case. The crowd pressed closer, smartphones emerging to capture what promised to be an entertaining confrontation. "Fake," Ashley announced with absolute certainty. "The color is wrong, and the weight feels off." Both statements were lies. The card was genuine and easily verifiable, but Ashley's performance was designed for her audience, not for accuracy. Jennifer Park stepped closer, her experience with high-end financial instruments making her uncomfortable with Ashley's assessment. "Ashley, that looks legitimate. Maybe we should run it through." "Are you questioning my judgment, Jennifer?" Ashley's voice carried the same threat she'd used with Marcus. "I've been doing this job for 4 years. I know a fake card when I see one." What happened next would be replayed on social media millions of times. Ashley, drunk on her own authority and playing to her approving audience, took the Black Centurion card in both hands and tore it cleanly in half. The distinctive ripping sound of high-quality plastic echoed through the marble lobby like a gunshot. The crowd gasped. Jennifer Park's hand flew to her mouth in horror. Marcus stepped backward as if physically struck. Even Dave Patterson, the security guard, looked shocked by the extreme nature of Ashley's action. But Ashley wasn't finished. With theatrical flourish, she tore the card into smaller pieces and dropped them ceremoniously into the wastebasket behind the counter. The gesture was designed to be final, humiliating, and absolutely definitive. "Problem solved," Ashley announced to her audience. "We don't tolerate fraud at the Grandfield Regency." Camille stared at the wastebasket, containing the shredded remains of her credit card. The Centurion card wasn't just a financial instrument. It was nearly impossible to replace, required extensive verification, and represented access to exclusive services worldwide. Ashley had just destroyed something worth far more than its apparent value. But more than that, she'd made a crucial miscalculation, because that particular Black Centurion card belonged to Dr. Camille Rodriguez, CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality Corporation, and Ashley Mitchell had exactly 4 minutes left in her career. The destruction of the credit card marked the end of Ashley's performance and the beginning of Camille's response. As the crowd waited for the humiliated woman to slink away in defeat, Camille instead reached calmly into her messenger bag and withdrew her smartphone. The real show was about to begin. The shredded pieces of plastic in the wastebasket seemed to energize Ashley Mitchell. She straightened her shoulders and turned to address the growing crowd of hotel guests who had gathered to witness the spectacle. Her voice carried the satisfaction of someone who believed she had just performed a heroic act. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this disruption to your evening," Ashley announced, her tone dripping with false professionalism. "As you can see, we take security very seriously at the Grandfield Regency. We simply cannot allow fraudulent activities to compromise the safety and comfort of our valued guests." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman, a 70-year-old socialite wearing diamonds that could fund a small country's education budget, nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, dear. You can never be too careful these days." Her husband, retired investment banker Charles Whitman, adjusted his gold cufflinks and added, "It's refreshing to see staff who understand the importance of maintaining standards. Too many establishments have become lax about who they allow inside." The coded language wasn't lost on anyone present. Ashley basked in their approval, feeling validated in her actions. This was exactly the kind of response she'd come to expect from the Grandfield's clientele: wealthy, white, and comfortable with exclusion disguised as security measures. Dr. Camille Rodriguez remained perfectly still, her smartphone now in her hand but not yet activated. She was studying the faces around her with the same analytical precision she brought to corporate mergers. Every reaction, every word of support for Ashley's behavior, every moment of silent complicity was being cataloged for future reference. Behind the reception desk, Marcus Thompson felt sick to his stomach. He'd witnessed Ashley's discriminatory behavior before, but destroying someone's credit card crossed a line he'd never seen her cross. His own experiences with racism made him acutely aware of what was happening, but 4 years of working in predominantly white spaces had taught him that speaking up often made things worse for everyone involved. Jennifer Park had gone pale, her fingers frozen above her computer keyboard. She'd recognized something in the destroyed credit card that Ashley had missed: the subtle security features, the unique coloring, the distinctive weight. That hadn't been a fake card. That had been a genuine Centurion card, possibly worth more than Ashley's annual salary in terms of the credit limit and exclusive access it provided. Young tech entrepreneur Bradley Foster pulled his phone closer to his face, live streaming the confrontation to his followers. "This is insane, guys," he whispered into his camera. "Hotel staff just destroyed some woman's credit card in front of everyone. This is going viral for sure." His companion, venture capitalist Rebecca Chen, wasn't filming but was taking mental notes. Something about the woman's composure struck her as unusual. Most people would be shouting, crying, or storming out by now. Instead, this woman stood with the stillness of someone who held cards that hadn't been played yet. Ashley's performance continued as she addressed Camille directly, her voice loud enough to ensure the entire lobby could hear. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises immediately. Your attempt to use fraudulent payment methods constitutes a crime, and we have witnesses." She gestured broadly to the crowd, many of whom were now openly recording with their phones. Ashley seemed to relish the attention, mistaking the cameras for validation rather than documentation of her behavior. Furthermore, Ashley continued, her voice rising with self-righteous authority, "Attempting to impersonate corporate affiliations is also illegal. I could have you arrested right now." Dave Patterson, the security guard, shifted uncomfortably. His law enforcement background made him recognize that Ashley was making legal claims without basis. Destroying someone's credit card, even if suspected of being fake, wasn't standard protocol. The proper procedure would have been to verify the card's authenticity through normal banking channels, not theatrical destruction. "Ashley," he said quietly, "maybe we should slow down here. Let me call the police to verify." "Dave, I don't need police verification to spot an obvious fake," Ashley cut him off. "Look at her. Does she look like someone who could afford a Black Centurion card? Does she look like she belongs in a place like this?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Ashley had finally said out loud what everyone in the lobby had been thinking. The discrimination was no longer hidden behind coded language about standards and security. It was raw, naked prejudice presented as common sense. Mrs. Whitman's friend, Patricia Bloomfield, whispered loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, I don't understand how she even got past the front door. The doormen are supposed to screen for this sort of thing." Robert, the doorman who had greeted Camille with minimal courtesy, heard the comment and felt a chill run down his spine. He remembered his momentary hesitation when she'd approached, the split-second calculation about whether she belonged. Had he failed some unspoken test by allowing her inside? Camille finally spoke, her voice cutting through the crowd's murmur with quiet authority. "I'd like to speak with your manager, please." Ashley's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "My manager isn't here to deal with attempted fraud. That's what security is for." She looked meaningfully at Dave Patterson, clearly expecting him to escort Camille from the building. But Dave had been studying Camille's body language, and everything about her demeanor suggested someone accustomed to authority rather than someone attempting a scam. Her posture was straight but relaxed. Her voice remained calm despite the escalating humiliation, and her request to speak with management was exactly what an innocent person would ask for. "Ma'am," Dave said carefully, "before we escalate this situation, would you be willing to provide alternative identification? Maybe we can resolve this without—" "Dave!" Ashley's voice cracked like a whip. "Are you seriously going to let her manipulate you? Look at the evidence. Fake credit card, fake corporate story, inappropriate dress for our establishment. This is textbook fraud behavior." The crowd pressed closer, sensing that the confrontation was reaching a climax. Smartphones captured every word, every gesture, every expression. What they didn't realize was that they were documenting what would become one of the most studied examples of institutional racism in hospitality industry training programs. Young hotel management student Kevin Walsh, who was staying at the Grandfield as part of an industry internship program, watched with growing unease. His coursework had covered discrimination issues in hospitality, and what he was witnessing checked every box for racial profiling. But the crowd's approval of Ashley's behavior made him question his own judgment. His roommate, business major Tyler Green, had no such doubts. "Dude, this is messed up," he whispered. "That lady hasn't done anything wrong. They're just assuming she's a criminal because of how she looks." Meanwhile, Camille had activated her smartphone and was scrolling through her contacts. The crowd assumed she was calling a lawyer or perhaps a friend to pick her up. They had no idea she was selecting a number that would end Ashley's career in a matter of minutes. Ashley, emboldened by the crowd's support and misreading Camille's calm demeanor as defeat, decided to deliver what she thought would be the final blow. "Security cameras have recorded everything," Ashley announced triumphantly. "We have video evidence of your attempt to use fraudulent payment methods. This footage will be provided to law enforcement along with witness statements from our guests." She gestured to the crowd, many of whom nodded their agreement to serve as witnesses. They saw themselves as upstanding citizens helping to maintain order and security. None of them recognized that they were about to become unwitting participants in a viral video about corporate accountability. Jennifer Park couldn't remain silent any longer. Despite the risk to her job security, she stepped forward. "Ashley, I really think we should verify the card through proper channels before—" "Jennifer, you're out of line," Ashley snapped. "This is my front desk, and I make the decisions about suspicious guests. If you can't support hotel security policies, maybe you need to reconsider whether you belong here either." The threat was clear and public. Jennifer felt the familiar sting of retaliation for attempting to do the right thing. She'd seen other employees disciplined or dismissed for questioning Ashley's methods. The message was always the same: conform to the discriminatory culture or face consequences. Marcus Thompson watched Jennifer's humiliation with recognition and rage. He'd been in similar positions countless times. Watching discrimination happen, knowing it was wrong, but feeling powerless to intervene without risking his own employment. The system was designed to maintain silence through fear. Camille finished selecting the contact on her phone and looked up at Ashley with an expression that was hard to read. "You're absolutely certain about your assessment of my credit card and my right to be here?" "Completely certain," Ashley replied without hesitation. "I've never been more sure of anything in my professional career." The words would be replayed millions of times on social media, set to music, turned into memes, and studied in business schools as an example of catastrophic overconfidence. But at that moment, Ashley believed she was demonstrating the kind of decisive leadership that had earned her 4 years of praise from management. Camille nodded slowly and pressed a number on her phone. The call connected almost immediately. Legal department, came the crisp voice of attorney Sarah Martinez, Pinnacle Hospitality's chief legal counsel. "Sarah, it's Camille," Dr. Rodriguez said calmly. "I need you to conference with our board of directors immediately. We have a situation at the Grandfield Regency that requires immediate corporate response." The crowd around the reception desk began to quiet as they registered the professional tone of the conversation. Ashley's confident smirk faltered slightly as she heard phrases like board of directors and corporate response, but she quickly dismissed them as part of an elaborate bluff. "Also," Camille continued into the phone, "please have our PR team prepare a statement about discriminatory practices at newly acquired properties. And get our HR director on the line. We're going to need termination paperwork prepared immediately." The lobby fell completely silent except for the soft classical music playing from hidden speakers. Even the most confident supporters of Ashley's actions began to sense that something had shifted in the dynamic. The woman they'd assumed was defeated was speaking with the authority of someone accustomed to making corporate decisions. Ashley's voice cracked slightly as she addressed Camille. "You can't intimidate us with fake phone calls. Security, escort this person out immediately." But Dave Patterson was no longer moving to comply. His instincts were screaming that he was witnessing something unprecedented, and every word of Camille's phone conversation suggested that Ashley had made a catastrophic error in judgment. The phone call continued, and within 30 seconds, everything Ashley thought she knew about power, authority, and consequences would be turned upside down. The woman whose credit card she had destroyed with such theatrical flair was about to reveal exactly who she was and what that destroyed card represented. The 4 minutes were almost up. The conference call connected with a series of electronic beeps that echoed through Camille's phone speaker. Ashley Mitchell watched with growing unease as multiple voices joined the line, each introduction carrying the weight of corporate authority she'd never encountered before. "This is Robert Chen, chairman of the board," came the first voice, crisp and businesslike despite the late hour. "Linda Foster, chief operating officer," followed another. "Michael Torres, chief financial officer, present. Patricia Williams, head of acquisitions, on the line." Each name hit Ashley like a physical blow. These weren't the voices of people participating in an elaborate bluff. These were executives being pulled into an emergency conference call, their tone suggesting they were responding to a genuine crisis rather than playing along with someone's deception. The lobby crowd pressed closer, their phones capturing audio of what was clearly becoming a corporate emergency meeting. Bradley Foster adjusted his live stream angle to better capture the woman who was somehow orchestrating a board-level conference call from a hotel lobby at 9:30 on a Tuesday night. Dave Patterson, the security guard, took a step back from Camille, his law enforcement instincts finally overriding Ashley's authority. Everything about this situation had shifted from routine security matter to something far more complex and potentially explosive. "Board members," Camille's voice carried across the marble lobby with calm precision, "I'm currently standing in the reception area of the Grandfield Regency Hotel, our newest acquisition. I'm here to report that staff member Ashley Mitchell has just committed an act of deliberate discrimination, destroyed my personal credit card, and made false accusations of criminal fraud in front of multiple witnesses." Ashley's face went white. The names of board members, the reference to our newest acquisition, the professional tone of corporate crisis management, all of it crashed into her consciousness like a freight train. But her mind refused to process what she was hearing. It was impossible. The woman standing before her couldn't possibly be connected to corporate executives. "Ma'am," Ashley said, her voice now uncertain but still defiant, "you can't intimidate us with fake conference calls. I don't know how you're doing this, but—" Chairman Robert Chen's voice cut her off through the phone speaker. "Ms. Mitchell, this is not a fake conference call. You are speaking to the Board of Directors of Pinnacle Hospitality Corporation, and you have just committed multiple policy violations against our Chief Executive Officer." The words hit the lobby like a bomb. Smartphones captured the exact moment Ashley's face transformed from defiant certainty to dawning horror. Her mouth opened and closed wordlessly as the implications crashed over her in waves. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman grabbed her husband's arm, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light as her hand trembled. "Charles, did he just say Chief Executive Officer?" Her husband was frantically Googling on his phone, his face growing pale as search results populated his screen. Dr. Camille Rodriguez, CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality Corporation. Net worth $1.2 billion. Oh my God, Eleanor. Oh my God. The crowd erupted in whispers and gasps as guests throughout the lobby began searching for information on their phones. The woman they'd watched being humiliated wasn't a scammer or fraud artist. She was one of the most powerful executives in the hospitality industry. Jennifer Park's legs nearly gave out as she gripped the reception counter for support. She'd known something was wrong with Ashley's assessment, but this revelation exceeded her worst fears. They hadn't just discriminated against a guest, they'd humiliated their new boss on her first visit to the property. Marcus Thompson stared at Camille with a mixture of horror and recognition. As one of the few black employees at the Grandfield, he understood exactly what had just happened. A black woman in power had been subjected to the same racism he faced daily, but unlike him, she had the authority to do something about it. Bradley Foster's livestream exploded with comments as viewers realized they were watching corporate history unfold in real time. "Guys, this is insane," he whispered into his phone. "We just watched hotel staff discriminate against a billionaire CEO. This is going to be everywhere." Ashley finally found her voice, but it came out as a strangled whisper. That's impossible. She doesn't look like, she's not dressed like." "Like what, Ashley?" Camille asked quietly, her voice carrying across the silent lobby. "Please finish that sentence for our board of directors and all these witnesses." The trap was perfect and inescapable. Ashley had been caught expressing exactly the racist assumptions that had driven her behavior. Any words she spoke now would only confirm the discrimination that everyone had witnessed. Chief Operating Officer Linda Foster's voice came through the speaker with barely controlled anger. "Ms. Mitchell, are you suggesting that our CEO doesn't look like she belongs in our own hotel? Are you telling our board that you destroyed her credit card based on your assessment of her appearance?" Dave Patterson stepped forward, his security training finally overriding his confusion about the hierarchy. "Ma'am," he addressed Camille directly, "I need to apologize. I should have questioned this situation from the beginning. This never felt right." His public acknowledgement of the wrongness sent ripples through the crowd. If the security guard was backing down and apologizing, it confirmed that something catastrophic had occurred. Ashley's supervisor instincts kicked in desperately. "Dave, don't let her manipulate you. This has to be some kind of elaborate con. People like her don't become CEOs of major corporations." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. People like her. Ashley had finally said explicitly what everyone had been thinking implicitly. The discrimination was no longer hidden behind policy language or security concerns. It was naked racial prejudice expressed in front of witnesses and board members. Camille's voice remained steady as she addressed her board. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to note Ms. Mitchell's exact words for our legal team. She just stated that people like me don't become CEOs of major corporations. I believe that gives us clear documentation of the discriminatory mindset we're dealing with." Chief Financial Officer Michael Torres's voice crackled through the speaker. "Noted and recorded, Dr. Rodriguez. Our legal team is already preparing documentation for immediate termination with cause." The crowd watched in fascination as Ashley's world crumbled in real time. Her authority, her confidence, her career, all of it disintegrating with each word from the corporate executives who now held her professional life in their hands. Young hotel management student Kevin Walsh turned to his roommate with wide eyes. "Tyler, we're watching someone get fired by a board of directors. This is going to be in textbooks." "Dude, this is insane," Tyler whispered back. "She destroyed a billionaire's credit card because she thought black people couldn't afford luxury hotels." Ashley made one final desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "I was protecting the hotel. I was maintaining our standards. The previous management always told us to watch for people who don't fit our clientele profile." The admission was devastating. She'd just confessed to implementing discriminatory policies under previous management, giving Pinnacle's legal team everything they needed to justify immediate termination and potential legal action. Patricia Williams, head of acquisitions, spoke with icy precision. "Ms. Mitchell, you've just admitted to implementing discriminatory practices against guests based on racial profiling. You've also destroyed the personal property of our CEO while making false accusations of criminal behavior. Your employment with any Pinnacle property is terminated immediately." The finality in her voice left no room for appeal or negotiation. Ashley Mitchell's career in hospitality was over, ended by her own words in front of dozens of witnesses and board members who now had legal documentation of her discriminatory behavior. But the real shock was yet to come. As Ashley stood in stunned silence, Camille reached into her messenger bag and withdrew a folder that would prove her identity beyond any doubt and reveal the true scope of what had just occurred. The 4 minutes were up, and Ashley's nightmare was just beginning. The folder in Camille's hands contained documents that would shatter any remaining doubt about her identity and authority. As she opened it calmly, Ashley Mitchell stood frozen behind the reception desk, her face cycling through expressions of disbelief, terror, and desperate hope that this was all an elaborate nightmare. "For the benefit of our witnesses and security cameras," Camille announced clearly, "I'm now displaying my corporate identification, signed acquisition papers for the Grandfield Regency chain, and documentation of my appointment as CEO of Pinnacle Hospitality Corporation." She held up each document with the methodical precision of someone accustomed to presenting evidence in boardroom meetings. The acquisition papers bore yesterday's date and multiple corporate seals. Her executive identification displayed her photograph alongside security features that would be impossible to fake. Most damning of all was a copy of the press release announcing Pinnacle's purchase of the Grandfield chain, scheduled for publication in tomorrow morning's Wall Street Journal. Dave Patterson leaned closer to examine the documents, his security training helping him recognize authentic corporate paperwork. "Ma'am, these appear completely legitimate. I need to formally apologize for my role in this situation." Ashley's voice came out as a croak. "Those documents are fake too. They have to be. This whole thing is impossible." Her denial was met with uncomfortable silence from the crowd. Even her strongest supporters could no longer maintain their certainty. The evidence was overwhelming. The conference call with board members was ongoing, and Ashley's own words had painted her into an indefensible corner. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman whispered urgently to her husband, "Charles, we need to leave. We can't be associated with this." Her social instincts, finely tuned after decades in high society circles, recognized a scandal that would have far-reaching consequences. Being recorded as supporters of discriminatory behavior could destroy their reputation in the philanthropic community. But Charles Whitman was transfixed by the unfolding drama. "Eleanor, do you realize what we're witnessing? This is going to be international news." A billionaire CEO discriminated against at her own hotel. Bradley Foster's live stream had exploded beyond his usual audience. Comments flooded in from viewers around the world as the story spread across social media platforms. "Guys, I have 12,000 people watching right now," he whispered urgently into his phone. "This is the biggest thing that's ever happened on my stream." Rebecca Chen, the venture capitalist, had stopped thinking about this as entertainment. Her business mind was calculating the massive corporate implications. This is going to cost millions in legal settlements, PR recovery, and staff retraining. The stock price will tank when this goes public. Jennifer Park found her voice, finally free to speak truth without fear of retaliation. "Dr. Rodriguez, I recognized your card as authentic. I tried to stop her, but Ashley threatened my job when I questioned her assessment." Camille nodded grimly. "Jennifer, your courage in speaking up will be noted in your personnel file. Marcus, I saw your discomfort with this situation as well. Both of you clearly recognize that something was wrong." Marcus Thompson stepped forward, his voice shaking with emotion. "Ma'am, I've watched this happen before. Not this extreme, but Ashley has a pattern of treating certain guests differently. Management always supported her methods." The admission sent shockwaves through the remaining crowd. What they'd witnessed wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a systematic pattern of discrimination that had been institutionalized at the Grandfield. Ashley's desperation reached new heights. "Marcus, how dare you throw me under the bus? I was protecting this hotel's reputation. I was following the policies that management praised me for implementing." "What specific policies?" Camille asked, her voice carrying the authority of someone conducting a corporate deposition. "Please describe these policies for our board members and legal documentation." It was another perfect trap. Ashley could either admit to implementing discriminatory policies or claim she'd acted without authorization. Either answer would be devastating to any legal defense. Chief Legal Counsel Sarah Martinez's voice came through the phone speaker with prosecutorial precision. Ms. Mitchell, anything you say now is being recorded and will be used in potential legal proceedings. You have the right to remain silent and consult with an attorney. The Miranda-style warning crystallized the gravity of Ashley's situation. This had moved beyond employment termination into potential criminal and civil liability. Her destruction of the credit card, false accusations of fraud, and admitted discriminatory practices could result in serious legal consequences. Young hotel management student Kevin Walsh was frantically taking notes on his phone. "This is going to revolutionize how they teach discrimination law in hospitality programs," he told his roommate. "We're watching the creation of a landmark case study." Ashley's final desperate gambit was to appeal to the crowd that had initially supported her. "Ladies and gentlemen, you all saw what happened. You all agreed that she didn't belong here. You were witnesses to her suspicious behavior." But the crowd was already dispersing, guests hurrying toward elevators and exits to avoid further association with the scandal. Mrs. Whitman grabbed her husband's arm. "Charles, we're leaving immediately. Delete any photos you took." Patricia Bloomfield was already on her phone with her lawyer. "Gerald, I need crisis management advice. I may have been recorded supporting discriminatory behavior at a hotel. Yes, it's already going viral." The mass exodus left Ashley increasingly isolated. Her supporters had vanished the moment they realized the true stakes of the situation. She stood alone behind the reception desk, her authority evaporated, her career destroyed, facing potential legal action from one of the most powerful executives in the hospitality industry. Camille addressed her board members through the ongoing conference call. "I want immediate implementation of our diversity and inclusion protocols at all Grandfield properties. Schedule mandatory retraining for all guest-facing staff within 48 hours. And I want a complete audit of hiring practices, promotion patterns, and guest complaint records." "Already in motion, Dr. Rodriguez," came Patricia Williams's voice. "Our human resources team is mobilizing for a comprehensive overhaul of operations at all acquired properties." The efficiency of the corporate response demonstrated exactly why Camille had built Pinnacle into a billion-dollar empire. Her team could pivot from acquisition celebration to crisis management within minutes, implementing systematic solutions while documenting everything for legal protection. Ashley watched helplessly as her professional world collapsed around her. 4 years of career building, destroyed in 4 minutes of racist assumptions. Her reputation in the hospitality industry would be toxic. No luxury property would hire her after this scandal went public. But Camille wasn't finished. She had one more revelation that would demonstrate the true cost of Ashley's discriminatory behavior. "Ms. Mitchell, I want you to understand exactly what you destroyed when you tore up my credit card," Camille said, her voice carrying across the now quiet lobby. "That was a genuine Black American Express Centurion card with a credit limit of $5 million. The replacement process takes 6 weeks and requires extensive verification from American Express's private banking division." The numbers hit Ashley like physical blows. $5 million. 6 weeks replacement time. Private banking division. Each detail hammered home the magnitude of her error and the impossibility of undoing what she'd done. "More importantly," Camille continued, "that card was linked to corporate accounts that handle payroll for 12,000 employees across 4 countries. Your actions have potentially disrupted financial operations for families who depend on Pinnacle Hospitality for their livelihoods." The broader implications were staggering. Ashley's moment of discriminatory theater hadn't just humiliated one woman. It had potentially impacted thousands of employees and their families. The scope of consequences was beyond anything she could have imagined. Dave Patterson stepped forward with genuine remorse. "Dr. Rodriguez, I failed in my duty as security personnel. I should have recognized that Ms. Mitchell's behavior was inappropriate regardless of who you were. No guest deserves to be treated with such disrespect." His apology carried the weight of professional integrity. Unlike Ashley, Dave recognized that discrimination was wrong regardless of the victim's status or authority. His acknowledgement of systemic failure would likely save his job and earn him respect from the new management. Camille nodded appreciatively. "Dave, your recognition of the problem and willingness to take responsibility will be noted. Security personnel play a crucial role in ensuring all guests feel welcome and safe." The contrast between Dave's accountability and Ashley's continued defiance was stark. One man's career would likely survive this scandal because of his integrity, while a woman's career was destroyed by her prejudice and inability to accept responsibility. As the lobby emptied and the immediate crisis wound down, The long-term consequences were just beginning. Within hours, the story would be international news. Corporate policies would be rewritten. Legal proceedings would begin. And Ashley Mitchell would become a cautionary tale taught in business schools and diversity training programs around the world. The 4 minutes that had started with a torn credit card had ended with the destruction of institutional racism at one of America's most prestigious hotel chains. But as Camille prepared to finally check into her reservation, she knew that real change would require much more than one dramatic confrontation. The hardest work was still ahead. Within 20 minutes of Bradley Foster ending his live stream, the video had been screen recorded, clipped, and shared across every major social media platform. The hashtag #Grandfield scandal began trending worldwide as millions of viewers watched Ashley Mitchell destroy a billionaire CEO's credit card based purely on racial assumptions. The story's viral trajectory was unprecedented. TikTok users created reaction videos, Twitter exploded with commentary from business leaders and civil rights activists, and Reddit's front page featured multiple threads dissecting every aspect of the confrontation. But the real firestorm was just beginning as major news outlets picked up the story. CNN's breaking news alert pinged across smartphones globally. Billionaire CEO racially profiled at her own hotel. Shocking video goes viral. The network had obtained additional footage from hotel security cameras, showing the full interaction from multiple angles. The crystal-clear audio captured every word of Ashley's discriminatory comments and the board members' shocked responses. Dr. Camille Rodriguez sat in the presidential suite of the Grandfield Regency, the same room Ashley had insisted she could never afford, watching the media explosion unfold on her laptop. Her communications team was fielding interview requests from every major network, while her legal department prepared for what would likely become a landmark discrimination case. "The phone hasn't stopped ringing," reported her chief of staff, Maria Santos, who had rushed to Chicago within hours of the incident. 60 Minutes wants an exclusive interview. The New York Times is preparing a front-page story, and we've received solidarity statements from over 200 corporate CEOs. But not all the attention was positive. Anonymous trolls flooded social media with racist attacks against Camille, claiming she had played the race card or set up the situation for publicity. The vitriol revealed the depth of racial prejudice that still existed in American society, even when faced with clear evidence of discrimination. Meanwhile, Ashley Mitchell had become the internet's most hated person overnight. Her full name, employment history, and social media profiles were being shared across platforms. Screenshots of her old posts revealed a pattern of questionable comments about maintaining standards and knowing who belongs where. The digital mob had found their target, and the consequences were swift and merciless. Ashley's apartment building was surrounded by reporters and protesters. Her landlord had already begun eviction proceedings after her identity was linked to the viral video. Dating apps banned her profiles. Local businesses refused her service. The court of public opinion had rendered its verdict, and there would be no appeal. "I can't even go to the grocery store," Ashley sobbed into her phone during a call with her mother in Ohio. "Everyone recognizes me. They're calling me the racist hotel lady. My whole life is ruined because of one mistake." But her mother, Margaret Mitchell, had watched the video along with millions of others. "Ashley, honey, that wasn't one mistake. That was 15 minutes of you humiliating that woman based on the color of her skin. You destroyed her credit card, called her a criminal, and said she didn't belong there. How did I raise a daughter who would do something like that?" The conversation ended with Ashley screaming that everyone was against her, that she was the real victim, that the woman had somehow tricked her into revealing her true nature. Even her own family was struggling to reconcile the daughter they'd raised with the person they'd watched on viral video. Back at Pinnacle Hospitality's corporate headquarters in Detroit, the crisis management team was working around the clock. Stock prices had initially dropped 12% when markets opened, but had since rebounded as investors recognized that Camille's handling of the situation had actually enhanced the company's reputation for corporate responsibility. The incident has generated over 50 million social media impressions in the first 24 hours, reported digital marketing director James Liu during an emergency board meeting. 93% of the sentiment analysis shows support for Dr. Rodriguez and condemnation of discriminatory practices. We're seeing unprecedented positive engagement with our diversity and inclusion initiatives. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the boardroom. Ashley's racist assumptions had inadvertently created the most powerful anti-discrimination message in corporate history. The video was being used in diversity training programs, college courses, and civil rights workshops around the world. But the legal implications were equally significant. Civil rights attorney Benjamin Clark had already filed a federal lawsuit against the Grandfield's previous ownership, citing a pattern of discriminatory practices that violated the Civil Rights Act. The case would likely result in millions of dollars in settlements and force industry-wide changes in hospitality training. "This isn't just about one racist employee," Clark explained during a press conference outside the federal courthouse. "Our investigation has uncovered systematic discrimination at luxury hotels across the country. The Grandfield incident is just the tip of the iceberg." Hotel industry executives were panicking. Emergency meetings were called at every major chain as corporate lawyers scrambled to audit their own practices. The Grandfield effect was forcing a reckoning with discriminatory policies that had been quietly tolerated for decades. Marriott International announced new bias training requirements for all employees. Hilton launched a comprehensive review of guest complaint patterns. The Ritz-Carlton implemented anonymous reporting systems for discrimination incidents. Ashley's 15 minutes of viral infamy were reshaping an entire industry. Meanwhile, the employees who had witnessed the incident were dealing with their own consequences. Marcus Thompson and Jennifer Park had been promoted and given leadership roles in Pinnacle's new diversity initiative. Their courage in speaking truth to power, despite the risk to their jobs, had earned them respect from the new management. Dave Patterson, the security guard, had been reassigned to training new security personnel in anti-discrimination protocols. His willingness to acknowledge his mistakes and take responsibility had saved his career and given him a chance at redemption. But the real heroes emerging from the story were the hotel workers across the country who began speaking out about discrimination they'd witnessed or been forced to implement. The viral video had given them permission to tell their own stories, creating a wave of accountability that swept through the hospitality industry. "I've worked at luxury hotels for 15 years, wrote Maria Gonzalez, a former Grandfield concierge, in a viral Medium post. "I've seen guests treated differently based on their skin color, their accents, their clothes. Management always said it was about maintaining standards, but we all knew what it really meant." The Ashley Mitchell video just showed the world what we've been living with every day. The testimonials kept coming. Housekeeping staff reported being told to pay extra attention to rooms occupied by minority guests. Front desk workers described training that emphasized profiling suspicious behavior, with examples that clearly targeted people of color. Security personnel revealed policies that encouraged them to question the legitimacy of certain guests' presence. Each story added to the mounting evidence that the Grandfield incident wasn't an isolated case of one racist employee. It was a symptom of institutional discrimination that had been systematically embedded in luxury hospitality culture. Dr. Camille Rodriguez found herself at the center of a national conversation about race, power, and corporate responsibility. Her calm dignity in the face of humiliation had inspired millions, but she knew that lasting change would require more than viral videos and public outrage. "This moment gives us an opportunity to examine who we are as a society," she said during her first television interview since the incident. "The question isn't just about one hotel or one employee. The question is about the systems we've built that allow discrimination to flourish, and what we're willing to do to change them." As the interview aired to record audiences, Ashley Mitchell sat alone in her darkened apartment, watching the woman whose life she'd tried to destroy speak with grace and wisdom about turning hatred into hope. For the first time since the incident, Ashley began to understand the true magnitude of what she had done and what she had lost in those 4 devastating minutes. The viral storm was far from over, but its ultimate impact was already clear. American society would never look at discrimination in the same way again. 6 months after that fateful October night, the reverberations of the Grandfield incident continued to reshape American corporate culture in ways no one could have predicted. What had begun as a routine business trip had evolved into a defining moment for civil rights in the modern era. Dr. Camille Rodriguez stood before the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva, addressing delegates from 193 nations about corporate responsibility and systemic discrimination. The same woman who had been humiliated in a hotel lobby was now setting global standards for equality in business practices. "The question we must ask ourselves," she told the assembly, "is not whether discrimination exists. We have video evidence that it does. The question is whether we have the courage to dismantle the systems that perpetuate it, even when those systems benefit us." Her speech was being broadcast live to corporate boardrooms around the world, where executives watched nervously as she outlined new international protocols for measuring and eliminating institutional bias. The Rodriguez standards were already being adopted by multinational corporations seeking to avoid their own viral scandals. Back in Chicago, the Grandfield Regency had been completely transformed. The marble lobby where Ashley Mitchell had destroyed a credit card now featured diverse artwork, celebrating inclusion and tolerance. The Staff Training Center bore a plaque reading the Camille Rodriguez Center for Hospitality Excellence, where employees from across the industry came to learn about unconscious bias and respectful service. Jennifer Park, now the hotel's Director of Guest Relations, led a tour of international hospitality students through the renovated property. "This is where it happened," she said, stopping at the reception desk, where new employee Marcus Thompson was checking in a family from Nigeria with warmth and professionalism. "Bays, the transformation wasn't just about firing one person," Jennifer explained to the students. "It was about examining every policy, every procedure, every assumption we had made about who deserved excellent service. We had to rebuild our entire culture from the ground up." The students, representing universities from 5 continents, took careful notes. The Grandfield case study was now a required curriculum in business schools worldwide, taught alongside historical examples of corporate social responsibility and ethical leadership. Meanwhile, Ashley Mitchell's story had taken an unexpected turn. After months of unemployment, death threats, and social isolation, she had finally accepted responsibility for her actions in a way that surprised everyone, including herself. "I used to think I was a good person who made one mistake," she wrote in a letter to Dr. Rodriguez, that would later be published in The Atlantic. "But watching that video over and over, seeing the look in your eyes as I destroyed your card, I realized I wasn't a good person who made a mistake. I was someone whose prejudices had been enabled by systems that rewarded me for exclusion." The letter continued for 3 pages, detailing Ashley's journey through therapy, her work with civil rights organizations, and her growing understanding of how her actions had perpetuated generations of discrimination. Most surprisingly, she requested no forgiveness, no second chances, no redemption narrative. "I don't deserve to be forgiven," she wrote, "but I do deserve to spend the rest of my life working to ensure no one else experiences what I put you through. If my shame can prevent even one person from acting on their prejudices, then perhaps some good can come from my failures." Dr. Rodriguez read the letter in her Detroit office, surrounded by awards, honorary degrees, and photographs with world leaders who sought her counsel on matters of equality and justice. Her initial instinct was skepticism. Too many public apologies had proven hollow. Too many supposed redemption stories had been carefully crafted PR campaigns. But something in Ashley's words rang authentic. The letter mentioned no book deals, no speaking tours, no attempts to monetize her notoriety. Instead, it described Ashley's volunteer work at homeless shelters, her donations to civil rights organizations, and her quiet efforts to educate others about the reality of unconscious bias. "She's been working with inner-city kids for 4 months," reported Camille's private investigator, whom she'd hired to verify Ashley's claims. "No cameras, no publicity. She teaches them about hospitality careers and helps them prepare for job interviews. The kids love her, and she's never once tried to make it about her own rehabilitation." This genuine transformation intrigued Camille more than any public apology could have. Ashley wasn't seeking redemption through grand gestures or media appearances. She was quietly, consistently working to repair the damage her worldview had caused. The legal proceedings had concluded with a settlement that funded diversity programs at hospitality schools across the country. Ashley had insisted on contributing her own savings to the fund, despite her financial difficulties. The symbolic gesture meant more to Camille than any corporate check ever could. But the real test came when Ashley requested a private meeting, not for forgiveness, but to share information about other employees and managers who had implemented similar discriminatory practices. She had become an unexpected whistleblower, helping investigators identify systemic problems throughout the industry. "There are others like me," Ashley said during their first face-to-face conversation since that October night, held in a neutral conference room with lawyers present. People who were trained to see certain guests as problems, who were rewarded for maintaining, quote, standards that were really just coded racism. They're still out there, still making assumptions, still destroying people's dignity, one interaction at a time. The conversation lasted 3 hours, and resulted in the most comprehensive investigation of discriminatory practices in hospitality history. Ashley's insider knowledge helped identify patterns of bias that had been carefully hidden behind corporate policies and training materials. More importantly, their dialogue began a new chapter in understanding how racism operates in corporate America. Ashley wasn't a cartoonish villain who woke up each morning planning to discriminate. She was a product of systems that had taught her to equate exclusion with professionalism, prejudice with standards. "I thought I was protecting the hotel," Ashley explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought people like me were supposed to keep people like you out. I never questioned why I thought that way or who benefited from those beliefs. I just followed the patterns I'd been taught and called it doing my job well." Dr. Rodriguez listened with the analytical mind that had built her business empire, but also with the emotional intelligence that had helped her navigate decades of discrimination with grace and determination. Ashley's transformation wasn't erasing the harm she'd caused, but it was providing valuable insights into how such harm could be prevented. "Your willingness to examine your own biases honestly is more valuable than any apology," Camille told her. "But I need you to understand that your personal growth doesn't entitle you to forgiveness from the people you've harmed. Redemption isn't something you earn. It's something you work toward every day without expecting a reward." Ashley nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to keep trying to do better, to keep learning, to keep fighting against the kind of thinking that made me destroy your card that night." The meeting ended with a handshake but no reconciliation. Camille respected Ashley's efforts while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Some wounds don't heal with time. They simply teach us to live differently. The broader impact of their story continued to unfold across multiple industries. Technology companies began auditing their hiring algorithms for racial bias. Financial institutions reviewed their lending practices for discriminatory patterns. Retail chains examined their loss prevention policies to ensure they weren't targeting customers based on appearance. The Granfield Standard became shorthand for zero tolerance of discrimination in any form. Companies that failed to meet evolving expectations found themselves facing boycotts, investigations, and viral campaigns that could destroy their reputations overnight. But perhaps the most significant change was generational. Young people who had watched the viral video were entering the workforce with fundamentally different expectations about equality and inclusion. They refused to accept "that's how we've always done it" as justification for discriminatory practices. Kevin Walsh, the hotel management student who had witnessed the original incident, was now working as an assistant manager at a Pinnacle property in Miami. His first week on the job, he encountered a situation that would have been handled very differently before the Granfield incident. A young black woman in casual clothes approached the front desk asking about room availability for a large family reunion. Kevin's training kicked in immediately. Not the old training that would have flagged her as suspicious, but the new protocols that emphasized treating every guest with dignity and respect. "I'd be honored to help you find accommodations for your family," he said warmly. "Let me show you our group booking options and see what kind of special services we can arrange for your reunion." The woman turned out to be Dr. Angela Hayes, a neurosurgeon planning a celebration for her grandmother's 90th birthday. Her family's 3-day stay generated over $50,000 in revenue for the hotel, but more importantly, it created the kind of positive experience that built customer loyalty and word-of-mouth recommendations. "6 months ago, I might have assumed she couldn't afford our rooms," Kevin admitted to his supervisor later. "The Granfield video changed how I see my role. I'm not here to judge who belongs. I'm here to make sure everyone feels welcome." This shift in mindset was replicated across thousands of businesses, as the next generation of leaders embraced inclusion not just as a moral imperative, but as a business necessity. Companies that failed to adapt found themselves losing talented employees and loyal customers to competitors who understood the new reality. Dr. Camille Rodriguez watched these changes unfold with satisfaction tempered by realism. The viral video had created unprecedented awareness of discrimination, but awareness alone wouldn't eliminate centuries of institutional bias. Real change would require sustained effort, constant vigilance, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths about power and privilege. As she prepared for her next board meeting, Camille reflected on the journey from that humiliating night in Chicago to her current role as a global advocate for corporate equality. The credit card Ashley had destroyed had been replaced within days, but the systems that enabled such treatment were proving more difficult to rebuild. The work continued, one policy change at a time, one training session at a time, one difficult conversation at a time. The Grandfield incident had been a catalyst, but lasting transformation would require the dedication of millions of people choosing to do better every single day. In her desk drawer, Camille kept a copy of Ashley's letter alongside thank you notes from employees who now felt safe reporting discrimination, guests who had been treated with dignity at Pinnacle Properties, and young people inspired to enter careers in hospitality management. The story that had begun with 4 minutes of hatred was still being written, one chapter of hope at a time. And in hotel lobbies around the world, guests of every background were being welcomed with the respect and dignity that should have been their right from the very beginning. The Grandfield scandal had ended, but the movement it sparked was just getting started. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.